The moment this news broke, the legal and firearms communities were sent into a whirlwind of shock and analysis. Within minutes, reports confirmed that a federal court has decisively reprimanded multiple states that have attempted to sidestep or defy the Supreme Court's recent Second Amendment ruling. This is not a routine judicial commentary or a minor procedural reprimand. This is a full-scale authoritative statement from a federal bench signaling that lower jurisdictions cannot selectively ignore constitutional precedent for gun owners, lawmakers, legal practitioners, and regulators alike. This is a moment that underscores the weight of federal authority and the enduring power of Supreme Court decisions. The energy around this ruling is palpable because it touches directly on the ongoing tension between state autonomy and constitutional fidelity. For decades, states have implemented varying restrictions on firearms, often testing the boundaries of federal oversight. Some states, emboldened by political agendas or public safety concerns, have tried to maintain or enforce bans that were increasingly at odds with Supreme Court precedent. But today's decision sends an unmistakable message. Federal courts will intervene when state actions undermine the constitutional rights affirmed at the highest level. The language used in this ruling was sharp, precise, and unambiguous, reflecting both the seriousness of the matter and the court's commitment to preserving the integrity of Second Amendment protections nationwide. The ruling comes at a pivotal moment in American legal history. Following landmark Supreme Court decisions, particularly those expanding interpretations of the Second Amendment, there has been widespread debate over the limits of state powers. States attempting to circumvent these rulings have argued public safety, local governance, and legislative discretion. While those arguments have historically carried weight in lower courts, today's decision makes it clear that the judiciary is drawing a firm line. States cannot cherry-pick which constitutional principles to enforce or ignore without facing immediate consequences. At the center of the controversy are firearms laws that have historically targeted semi-automatic rifles, handguns, magazine capacities, and other regulated items. In some states, these laws remained in place despite prior Supreme Court guidance clarifying the balance between individual rights and governmental regulation. Plaintiffs challenging these enforcement practices argued that such state actions violated not only the Second Amendment, but also principles of federal supremacy. The federal court's ruling now validates these concerns, confirming that selective enforcement or defiance of Supreme Court authority is legally unacceptable. One of the most striking aspects of the federal court's decision is its tone. Judges did not merely issue a passive warning or symbolic statement. They actively criticized the states for failing to align their statutes and enforcement practices with established constitutional mandates. The ruling emphasized that continued defiance creates confusion, legal inconsistency, and potential civil liability for state officials. By doing so, the court reinforced a critical principle. The Supreme Court's rulings are the ultimate interpretation of the Constitution, and lower jurisdictions are bound to follow them faithfully. The practical implications for firearm owners are immediate and significant. Individuals residing in states previously attempting to maintain defiant laws now have clear confirmation that federal authority will protect their rights. This clarity can affect ongoing litigation, compliance strategies, and ownership practices. Gun owners no longer need to navigate a fragmented legal landscape where some enforcement agencies may interpret state law contrary to constitutional mandates. Instead, the federal court's action restores consistency and reinforces legal predictability for millions of citizens exercising their Second Amendment rights. Beyond individual ownership, this decision has broad political and administrative implications. State legislatures now face the prospect of revising or repealing statutes that have been directly criticized by the federal judiciary. Lawmakers who have argued for local control must now weigh the political costs of continued resistance against the legal risks. Regulatory agencies must also reconsider enforcement priorities, understanding that attempts to maintain non-compliant restrictions could result in federal intervention, sanctions, or further litigation. In essence, the ruling creates a cascading effect that strengthens the supremacy of constitutional interpretation across all levels of government. The federal court's opinion also addresses the interplay between legal theory and practical enforcement. Judges highlighted the dangers of inconsistent application of firearm regulations, noting that when states operate outside the framework established by the Supreme Court, they erode public trust in the legal system. By clarifying the boundaries, the court is ensuring that firearm regulations are applied uniformly and equitably. This focus on predictability is particularly important for owners who travel across state lines or who engage in competitive shooting, hunting, or other lawful firearm activities that could be affected by conflicting state laws. Legal analysts have been quick to note that this ruling sets a precedent beyond the immediate cases at hand. Future disputes involving state-level restrictions that conflict with federal constitutional interpretation will now be viewed through this lens. Courts considering new challenges can reference this decision as evidence that defiance will not be tolerated. This reinforces a broader principle. Constitutional rights once affirmed at the Supreme Court level carry binding authority that states cannot override or undermine. The political ramifications are equally significant. Advocacy groups on both sides of the gun rights debate are reacting to the ruling, recognizing that it will influence legislative agendas, lobbying strategies, and public discourse. Pro-Second Amendment organizations view this as a powerful affirmation of individual rights and a roadmap for challenging restrictive laws. Conversely, groups advocating for more stringent firearm regulation are now forced to recalibrate, knowing that the federal judiciary will actively police compliance with Supreme Court rulings. This decision, therefore, is shaping not only legal landscapes, but also the political battlefield surrounding firearms policy. From a historical perspective, this moment is a clear example of how judicial authority reinforces constitutional continuity. The Supreme Court establishes the legal standard, and the federal judiciary ensures that it is respected across the nation. Attempts by individual states to create divergent interpretations undermine this system and have historically led to fragmented legal frameworks. Today's ruling underscores that the federal courts will act decisively to prevent such fragmentation, maintaining cohesion in the interpretation and enforcement of fundamental rights for states previously attempting to resist or delay compliance. This decision serves as both a warning and a roadmap. The court has made clear that rapid legislative adjustments, clear enforcement guidelines, and alignment with Supreme Court precedent are required. Failure to comply is no longer a theoretical risk. It now carries immediate legal and administrative consequences. This pressure will likely accelerate legislative action, reduce ambiguity in enforcement, and increase clarity for residents. The ruling also touches on the responsibilities of state officials. Judges explicitly noted that officials enforcing non-compliant laws risk personal and institutional liability. This serves as a strong incentive for policymakers and enforcement officers to align their practices with constitutional mandates quickly. The court emphasized that the protection of rights is paramount and that administrative convenience or political expediency cannot justify the violation of federally recognized protections for gun owners and the public. And the broader message is simple. Constitutional rights are being defended actively and judicial oversight is rigorous. Individuals who have faced legal uncertainty, penalties, or confusion due to conflicting state and federal laws can now see a clear path forward. Compliance with federal and Supreme Court guided standards ensures protection, whereas attempts to navigate defiant state statutes could carry increased legal risk. The decision also reinforces the interconnectedness of federal and state systems. While states maintain autonomy in many areas, they cannot contravene federal constitutional principles without consequence. This principle extends beyond firearms law, serving as a precedent for other rights where states might attempt to interpret Supreme Court rulings independently. By taking a strong stance, the federal court is reinforcing the hierarchy of authority and ensuring that fundamental rights are uniformly respected nationwide. Importantly, this ruling is not merely punitive, it also serves an educational function, clarifying expectations for lawmakers, regulators, and citizens alike by explicitly delineating the boundaries of legal compliance. The court reduces ambiguity, allowing individuals and agencies to plan and operate with greater certainty. This clarity is invaluable in a legal environment that has historically been murky, particularly in areas where state and federal law intersect. Looking forward, the implications are profound. Future litigation challenging state-level restrictions will be guided by this decision. Courts evaluating similar conflicts will have a clear example of the federal judiciary's stance, strengthening the enforceability of constitutional protections. Lawmakers will be forced to consider constitutional alignment in drafting new legislation, potentially reshaping policy across multiple states. For the firearms community, this ruling offers reassurance that rights affirmed at the Supreme Court level are being actively defended and that judicial oversight will prevent erosion of those rights through state defiance. The timing of this decision could not be more significant. In an era of polarized politics and frequent legal battles over gun rights, a decisive federal ruling provides stability and predictability. It demonstrates that constitutional interpretation is not a matter of political convenience, but a legal imperative for citizens. This reinforces trust in the judicial system and ensures that fundamental rights retain their intended protections regardless of shifting state-level agendas. In conclusion, the federal court's recent ruling delivered mere minutes ago sends a resounding message to all states. Defiance of Supreme Court precedent, particularly concerning the Second Amendment, will not be tolerated. This decision protects lawful firearm ownership, enforces consistency across jurisdictions, and reaffirms the supremacy of constitutional rights over political or administrative expediency. As the legal and firearms communities digest this development, one fact stands clear. The landscape of state-level firearms law has just shifted dramatically, and the federal judiciary is now actively ensuring that Supreme Court rulings are respected without compromise. The message is unambiguous, the implications are far-reaching, and the consequences for noncompliance are immediate. For gun owners, lawmakers, and legal experts alike, this ruling represents a turning point in the ongoing effort to maintain constitutional fidelity across the United States.